All right, today we're going to talk about one of history's most macabre inventions. Seriously, this thing is the stuff of nightmares. It was an instrument of torture so creatively sadistic, it wasn't just designed to kill. It was designed to turn the sound of pure agony into something else entirely. Yeah, that is the deeply unsettling question at the heart of our story today. The device is known as the Brazen Bowl, sometimes called the Bronze Bowl or the Sicilian Bowl, and its whole purpose was exactly that, to transform a victim's screams into a kind of, well, music for the person carrying out the execution.
So, to really get our heads around this legend, we need to go way back. We're talking ancient Greece, where this horrifying idea was supposedly born.
So where does this wild story even come from? Well, the first time we see it written down is thanks to a historian named Diodorus Siculus. He wrote this enormous history of the world, and tucked away inside it is the incredible, gruesome tale of the Brazen Bull. Now, this story really boils down to two main characters. On one side, you've got Perillus of Athens. You can think of him as this ancient, brilliant, but seriously twisted inventor, looking for someone to bankroll his dark new project. And his potential client? Oh, just Phalaris, the tyrant of Acragos, a ruler so famous for his cruelty that some stories even claimed he ate children. He was, you might say, the perfect, terrifying customer.
Okay, so how did this thing supposedly work? It was a masterpiece of calculated cruelty. First, the victim was locked inside the hollow bronze statue. Then, a fire was lit underneath, literally roasting them alive. But here's the truly twisted part. An internal system of pipes was engineered to capture their screams and convert them into a sound that mimicked the bellowing of a bull. To complete the whole horrible spectacle, the bull's nostrils were packed with incense, so the smoke would actually smell sweet. And for the final, gruesome touch, the victim's charred bones were supposedly collected and made into bracelets.
And get this was basically the inventor's sales pitch. Perillus apparently told the tyrant Phalaris that the victim's shrieks would come through the pipes as the tenderest, most pathetic, most melodious of bellowings. I mean, what an absolutely chilling idea. But the story doesn't end there. In fact, it takes a pretty wild turn. This is where a bit of poetic justice comes into play, because the sheer cruelty of this invention was about to boomerang right back on its creators. So you'd think a famously sadistic tyrant would be all over this, right? Well, in a shocking twist, Phalaris was supposedly disgusted by it. He found the ingenious cruelty so revolting that he decided the guy who came up with it deserved to be punished for even thinking of it.
And this is where the karma really kicks in. So Phalaris tricks the inventor, Perillus, into climbing inside his own creation, saying he wanted to test the acoustics. As soon as he was in, Phalaris locked the door and lit the fire, making the inventor the bull's very first victim. But it doesn't stop there. Years later, Phalaris himself was overthrown by his people, and legend says they executed him in the very same brazen bull. Now, the story of the Brazen Bull didn't just fade away in Greece. No, it traveled, it changed, and it became a powerful new symbol in a whole different empire, Rome. The Romans, who were definitely no strangers to brutal public spectacles, supposedly took the idea of the bull and ran with it. It became especially linked with the persecution of early Christians, turning this instrument of absolute terror into a symbol of martyrdom. Several famous Christian figures are said to have met their end this way. The most well-known is probably Saint Eustace, a Roman general who was sentenced to die in the bull with his wife and kids after he converted to Christianity. Another early Christian, Saint Antipas, is also said to have been killed in the exact same terrifying way. And this is where the story's narrative completely flips on its head. It goes from pure horror to a miracle. Christian accounts claim that when Saint Eustace and his family were put inside the fiery bowl, they didn't burn. Instead, they stayed alive and unharmed for 3 whole days, just praising God. When the bowl was finally opened, they were found lying there peacefully, without a single burn. It completely transformed the bowl from an instrument of terror into a test of faith. So we have these incredible stories. They're horrifying, they're miraculous, and they've been passed down for centuries. But now we have to put on our historian hats and ask the really big question. How much of the Brazen Bull story is actual verifiable history, and how much of it is just a really powerful legend? Well, when you start to really look at the hard evidence, the story gets a little shaky.
For one, that original Greek account, it was written centuries after Phalaris was even alive. And the stories about Christian martyrs, they all come from religious texts, which were written to inspire faith, not to be neutral historical records. And maybe the biggest clue of all, no archaeologist has ever found the physical remains of a brazen bull. So what that means is that any brazen bull you might see in a museum or a documentary is just a modern recreation. It's someone's best guess based on those ancient descriptions. They're powerful to look at for sure, but they aren't based on a real surviving artifact. The original, if it ever even existed, is completely lost to history. But in the end, whether the bull was real or not, its story has survived for over 2,000 years. And that tells us something, doesn't it? It's this powerful testament to how fascinated we are with cruelty, with poetic justice, and with faith. Which leaves us with one last question to think about. What's more powerful, an actual physical artifact of cruelty, or the terrifying story of it?